Hi guys, I'm Lisa from Elm & Bee and welcome back to my channel. Today I am going to be teaching you this really beginner friendly fairy garden painting. We are going to be using some genius painting hacks and you're going to use stuff that you've got lying around the house. We're going to be using toilet rolls. We are going to be using cotton buds or Q-tips. We are going to use a toothbrush, maybe even a fork, and I've got some other crazy genius hacks for you along the way. But please stay watching to the end because I'm saving the most magical of the hacks to last. So we're jumping straight into painting today. I've got some ultramarine blue, some light blue, I've got a light pink, I've got a light yellow and a medium yellow and some white. And we're going to create this magical fairy garden. And I am going to try and use a 1-inch flat brush for most of it. Let me just grab that fella for you. Here is my 1-inch flat brush. It's a pretty old one. So we're going to use that as the only paintbrush that I'm going to use today. I'm going to try and stick with a whole bunch of other objects. The other brush that I am using today, you can buy a mop brush, but this is actually a blusher brush for doing your makeup. So you can buy these super cheap online or like in your pound shop or the low-cost beauty supply shops, things like that. But those are the two brushes today. This one is an actual paintbrush, but this one is actually a makeup brush. We are going to start by taking our blues and we are going to just go for random shapes, splodges, blending them together as we go. And then I'm going to occasionally pick up a bit of that pink and bring a little bit of that pink in there. I'm not worrying about cleaning off my brush. I'm not worrying if I get a bit of that kind of grey colour from using the pink. And I'm just going to build that up until we have covered the top of the canvas. I'm using this brush dry just now. And I just want to create lots of splodges and shades of blue. I'm going to pick up a bit of both and get this little top corner up here done. And I'm not worrying too much about completely covering it. Some of you might have noticed that I've got some use back in my right hand, which is quite nice. But I'm still trying to remember to use my left as much as possible so that I can keep this for when I need it for details. Right, I'm not needing to cover the whole of the canvas at this stage. We just want to get most of that top. Oh, we're just below halfway. That's probably the halfway line there, and we're just coming below halfway. We want to get that covered with all these different splodges of blue. Right, I'm just going to pop my flat brush into the water just now, and then I'm going to grab this makeup brush. Quite often I work with these and I keep them dry, but on this occasion I just want it to be damp. So I'm going to dip it into the water, but then I'm going to squeeze it out so that I'm getting just the dampest of bristles. So literally squeezing out all the water after I've dipped it in there. And then I'm just tapping really lightly into the white. So let me show you. We've got the tiniest bit of white on there. And then I'm going to tap onto my palette here so that I'm covering the whole of this fluffy makeup brush with a very, very pale layer of white. And it's very watery because of the damp. And then we're just going to start working in little swirls, really, really lightly. I am barely touching the canvas. And I'm just moving round and round, blending those colours in together. I'm going to be careful when I'm coming to the pink bits because I want some of the pink to stay. And as I work with this technique, you'll see that I'm picking up the blue. Don't know if you can see that there. So I'm going to just clean off the mop brush again, go back into the tiniest bit of water, squeeze it out, and then tap into the white again. So again, the tiniest bit of white on there, tapping on my canvas so that that watery white covers the whole of my brush, but it's the lightest amount. And then honestly barely touching the I can't do circles with my left hand, so I have to work with the right hand. I am barely touching the canvas at all. I'm just working down here so that I can get some of that water off the brush before I go back up into my sky here. So that is just maybe a little bit too wet, so again, just keep it really barely wet at all, just the tiniest amount of water. There we go. I just squeezed some water out again. So up to you. You can go as pale as you want. You could do another layer of white over there and get that even paler, but I think that's quite nice just now. So I'm just going to clean that off and put it to one side. And I'm going to come in with another little genius hack. This is the stopper from a gin bottle. You can see I've used it before. And I am just going to paint that. I'm going to get my flat brush back out of the water, make sure it's nice and clean, and I'm just going to paint this little gin stopper with some white, and we're going to create a little bit of a glowy sun in this sky before we start working on our flower meadow. So literally you won't be able to see me painting it because it's already white, but I'm just going to put a nice coat of white paint on the top of that stopper, and I'm going to pick a spot for my sun. Do you know, I think because I've got this nice pinky bit round here, I'm going to go over here somewhere. I'm pushing it down and I'm giving it a little twist because I want a really nice circle print. There we go. All I want is the shape of the circle, and then I'm going to just go in with a finger. Look, it's all about finger painting sometimes, isn't it? I'm going to go in with a finger and I'm going to do little circular motions. I've just got that guide from the gin bottle top, and then very, very lightly again, light pressure, dot in the middle of the circle, and then light pressure as I go around the edge of the circle, and that's just making a little bit of a hazy sun. So I'm just going to brush out the edges again, super lightly, brush out the edges. There we go. Now I've got a nice white center in the middle of my sun. Right, that's our super quick sky, and we are gonna work on building up the grass at the bottom. So we are gonna use our makeup brush again to do some blurring. we're going to use our flat brush again as well, but we're also going to use some cardboard. So I've got toilet roll tubes here, which I'm just going to flatten at one side. And that gives me a really nice straight line, and it makes it really easy to hold as well because you've just flattened it to a point. So we've got toilet roll. I have got a fork. I've got these wooden forks which just come with disposable meals and things, but you can use a metal fork, that works as well. You can use the edge of the fork or the tines of the fork. And I've got a random piece of cardboard as well, which again gives me another nice straight edge. So let me show you some of these techniques to build up our grass in this baby garden, or maybe it's a secret garden as well, I'm not sure. You might notice that we've not got any green here, but what we're going to do is use our two blues. That's the ultramarine and then our light blue permanent. We're going to use both of them and our two yellows to mix up some really, really nice shades of green. So we want the grasses that are furthest away from us in the background to be in the distance. So they are going to be our palest and our haziest grass. So we are going to use our palest blue and our palest yellow to mix up that color. So I'm just going to use this brush to mix up. So a blob of the palest blue and a blob of the palest yellow. And look at that gorgeous yellowy green that it's going to give me. So let me show you how you would use a flat brush to do this if you do want to practice your brush techniques. I'm tapping onto my palette so that the end of my brush becomes a nice sharp point, and you just want to sweep up the way in a fast motion, really lightly touching the canvas, and lift your brush off of the canvas when you're finished. So we're just going to sweep like this. Now, it does not matter how pale these are, if the paint goes on thick or it's thin, because this is my grass that is in the background. Okay, so we're doing the same thing on this side. And when you're painting grass, just remember some of the grass goes the other way, some goes straight up, some arches over. And I'm just also going to add a little hint of a horizon in that really pale green. Now, that's all well and good if you're feeling confident with a paintbrush and you want to use your paintbrush to make those marks. But maybe you aren't feeling confident with a paintbrush. So we can get our cardboard. I might just use the paintbrush to paint along the edge. So let's mix up some more of that pale. And we'll just paint that along the edge so you get a nice thick layer. And you could literally use that to print on some grass shapes. And what's the great thing about cardboard? You can bend it. So if you want a nice piece of bent grass, then you can pop that on too. Okay, so let's build that up some more. Got this one bending this way now, so we're going to go there and tap, tap, tap. Maybe one going the other way, so turning it round. So you can use your toilet roll to do that. You can use your cardboard. Again, you might get it more flexible. You can do the same thing. We can use our little fork and we can get some of that paint on there, and you can brush up the way. Let's get a bit more paint on there. Sometimes putting the paint on with the paintbrush helps. You could probably even print on little bits of grass. But what we want to do is I'll show you that one when we're closer to the beginning, closer to the front and the foreground. and that you can see more of the print. What we want to do is keep this grass in the background super light and super hazy. So this brush is dried off while it was sitting there, and I'm just going to brush over that pale green. And we'll add some more. And then we're just going to brush that out so that it's hazy. Okay, once we've got our row of pale green, we're going to stick with the lightest blue, but we're going to bring in the darker yellow. So we just scoop some of that up and mix that in. And then that's going to give me another shade of a light green. And again, you can use all of these techniques. You can use the edge of your brush like this. Make sure you go in different directions and different angles. Just keeping it a bit lower at the middle. And we're just working quite lightly, hardly touching the canvas at all. We can do some fork prints and lines in there. Quite like doing this kind of technique with the fork where we're going back and forward. You can also use the edge of the fork just like we did with the cardboard, but then you'll get a straight line. You won't be able to put any bend in it. So we're building up lots and lots of layers. Remember to go some tall, some short, some can be fat. Working quite quickly because I want my paint to stay a little bit wet and not be completely dry. So that I can then brush over the top of it with, just tap straight into the paint there, brush over the top of it with the makeup brush and get that nice hazy. So you can either brush back down the way or you can brush up the way. We're just trying to make these far away grasses look a bit hazy. Now I'm going to keep working with those two colors, so the light blue and the light yellow and the light blue and the dark yellow, and I'm going to build up that kind of first couple of layers of grasses, and then I'll come back to you when we're going to work on the darker grasses at the front. Okay, so before we go in with our darker greens, I want to create a little bit of lightness in here. Again, you can use the edge of your toilet roll, you could use your fork. I'm just going to go in with my flat brush just now. I'm going to bring in some of the pale yellow and a little bit of white just to get it really, really light. And then a tiny touch of that light blue. So we've still got the greeny hint, but it's mostly the pale yellow and white. Now the reason I'm going in super light for a little bit is just that we've got this hazy sun here, right? So I'm thinking that some of the foliage here is gonna have a little bit more of that sun on there. So we're just gonna bring in a few little light bits, maybe just on the top of some of these grasses, blades of grass, lovely. And just a few random flicks here and there. So I'm just barely touching the canvas with the edge of the brush, just trying to bring in a little bit of an even paler color. And I kind of want a bit of a paler color on the ground here as well, just for us to work on top of when we are going in with those darker blues. Trust the process, guys. We're only halfway through this grass. We've got many, many more layers to come, so a few little bits of white. Something I've learned in paintings over the years, and even when you're working on really basic beginner ones, if you can have areas of very, very light and areas of very, very dark, that contrast is going to help loads. So that's our little pool of light there. I don't want that to be all stripy, so look, I'm going to go back in with my fork. Oh, good old fork technique, and get a few wee marks and dots in there. So just tapping into the paint and then tapping it on, pulling it down, moving it about so that we can get what looks like little blades of grass. And then again, I'm just always going back in with this big fluffy brush, and just before things are fully dry, just softening those with a little brush over. So the paint is almost dry, and I'm just softening them, giving it a good old brush. Right, so let's go on now. We have used our palest blue and our palest yellow, and we've used the palest blue and the dark yellow. Now we're going to go in with this dark blue. I don't mind mixing all my colours on top of each other. It just picks up the other colours we've already got in the painting. So we're going to go with some dark blue. We'll see how strong we want it. And the pale yellow. So now working with the dark blue and the pale yellow. And our last of our four greens is going to be the dark blue and the dark yellow. And it's up to you. You can mix as many shades of green as you want in this. I'm going to make a little bit more of that one. And you can obviously do variations, you know, you can add more yellow or more blue or anything you like. So again, you can work with your flat brush, or you can work with cardboard or your toilet roll tube. And you just want to start brushing in some darker blades of grass. Now, as we get closer to the front, these blades of grass can get a little bit thicker, so you might find this is a good time to experiment with using the flat edge of your brush, because you're not so worried if you make a thicker mark. You can also just literally tap, 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 and that'll give you a nice blade of grass shape as well. So little taps might be good for the edge. And we can also go in with our toilet roll again and our fork and stuff. So let's get in there with a few different things and see what marks we can make. We're also going to bring some of that darker color into the bottom, just bringing it all darker as we get to the front. Let's brush some of that through. Just keeping that blades of grass feel as we go. And then we're going to go even darker. But let's leave that just now. Give everything we just did a light dust over. But then I'm about to stop using this because I actually want the stuff in the foreground at the front of the picture to be more in focus. So every time we brush over with our makeup brush, we are making that background a little bit fuzzy. And now we're getting to the foreground. We don't want it to be fuzzy. We want it to be nice, crisp, and clear. So we're going to go in with our toilet roll again and get some sharper blades of grass and lines, and I'm working with both hands here, giving my right hand a little bit of a break at times. So we're going in with lots of the dark blue and lots of the dark yellow. And we're going to get a much earthy tone for this one. Okay, and I'm going to paint some of that on the bottom. That's my darkest of the earthy tones. And then we're going to come back with a bit more of that dark blue at the end. So I just want to fill in this space here. And I'm going to curve it up at the side slightly. Curve it up at the side. Just giving me the impression of moving into the painting. So we've got our grassies curving round here. Okay, let's add some of that in again with our toilet roll. Just so we've got another earthy colour of green. So a few of those. Oh, that's a good one. Basically mix some of that into the colours that I've already got here because I want to go really, really dark. And I want to bring some of that right into the foreground. So you can paint onto your fork, and you can do, I'm just going to go straight blue, I think. Scraping down into that nice thick paint that we put on there. And a few straight blue blades of grass coming right from the bottom of the canvas. I'm going to move up the way. Printing it on, sliding up the way. Do the same on the other side. Printing it on, sliding up the way. Looking good. And I want to go in with some straight pale yellow, because again we've got this sun hitting onto this grassy meadow, so we want to get some pale yellow on its own. So I'm just tapping straight into the paint, picking it up along the edge of my toilet roll. And I'm going to try and just pick out some of those darker spots and highlight a bit of that yellow. And because I've already got blue on my toilet roll, then we're getting a kind of green colour anyway. Okay, I'm going to go in to the middle. I'm going to squeeze that tip of the toilet roll tube really tight so I can bring in a bit more green in here. Let's go in with our cotton buds or our Q-tips. Now we can do a couple of things here. We can build up some detail in our grasses. So I'm going to take a mixture of this greeny blue colour. Let's get a bit more of that yellow in there. And that's just all the colours together. And we're going to use the side of the Q-tip to make a little stamp. So we're going to do like a little stamp of the side of the Q-tip, which makes a kind of petal shape or the shape of the edge of a grass, you know, like a wheat or an oat or something like that. So we're going to add some of those onto some of our blades of grass, the ones that are across the sky, because then we're going to be able to see those shapes easier. So here I am, two-handed, working from one hand to the other. I'm going to give you a few more of these. And you can do any colour you like. I've just kind of gone for the mid green in these. We could do some in the dark blue. You could do some in the bright yellow. And I'm just using the cotton bud as a stamp, basically, to create the tops of the blades of these grass. We're also going to use these to make some flowers. Okay, so I'm going to get a clean one of these, and we're going to work with our yellow and our white. So I'm just going straight in with the yellow, and I am going to work down the way. Oh, there we go. Let me work this hand and see if you can see what I'm doing. So I'm working with the petals all facing down the way, as if the flower is facing up to the sun. So we're going to do one. I'm going really thick with the paint here, just using these Q-tips, or cotton buds as we call them in the UK, to make little petal-shaped prints. So it's the same technique as we were doing here. We're just printing the cotton bud onto the canvas. We're just using the shape of the actual tip to create the petals, but I'm just kind of pushing a bit heavier so that I get a slightly bigger print. Okay, we're going to do another one up here. Those are my biggest ones, and I might go in now with some little ones where I'm only maybe going to do 3. So 1, 2, 3. And then 1, 2, 3. And just find different places to pop them. Try and keep them in odd numbers. That tends to work as well. And you can also just do like 1, 2, 3 little dots. 1, 2, 3. So that's just using the actual top of the cotton bud itself. And we add some here and some here. Just moving about. The further away we get, the smaller the dots are going to be, and also the paler the dots are going to be. So if we mix some white into that, twist the cotton bud or the Q-tip round and round and round, pull it out, then we can hopefully get smaller dots and further away dots. So they are a bit paler, they're further away. They've still got that little yellowy tone to them. And they're a bit brighter as well. And so that's another color that we can add in. We could go in with another set of flowers. In a different color, you could mix in some of the pink and you could go in for a pink flower. I am going to use that pale color to go on top of the flowers that I've already got, just to give them a bit more depth. We're going to go in with straight white. I found a little bit of my white that is still completely straight white, and I'm going to do a couple of blobs. You can do one big blob or a few little blobs to be the center of these flowers. Almost there. Any more big flowers? Nope, that's them all done and dusted. And now we are going to add a little bit of extra fairy magic to this. I'm going to show you another couple of techniques, and then I'm just going to finish off with some more flowers down the bottom here. So I showed you at the beginning that we've got a toothbrush. We are going to get our toothbrush wet. So I've just dipped it in my water. There we go. So that's just plain water. and I'm dipping it in the white and the yellow together, and I'm just getting that pale white and yellow mixture together, and I'm just making sure the whole of my toothbrush is covered with a very watery pale white yellow mixture. And we are going to flick this onto the canvas, and my top tip here is just test a little bit first to make sure that you've got it watery enough. If it's not watery enough, it won't flick, okay? So you're going to get a nice messy thumb doing this, but we are going to splatter the canvas just round. So I'm just working round the edge of the flowers and the grasses, and that's going to create that magical hazy, maybe it's pollen, maybe it's fairy dust, working away. And if it's not flicking enough, you just want to add a tiny bit more water. If you go too wet, you'll get too big blobs. You'll get really big blobs, and you don't want big blobs. So you're better to have it drier and then add more water as you go. So there we go, a little bit more. Trying to keep it away from the sun, keeping it away from the very bottom edge, but flicking it over all of the other flowers and grass. And I am going to show you one more magical technique before I complete this painting. I just want the tiniest little bit more right in there. There we go. Clean off my thumb, and I'm going to show you one more little technique just to add some magic to this painting. Like I say, I'm going to add some more flowers and things down here to finish this one off, but here is how you can create the hint of a little fairy, okay? So let's pick a spot for our fairy to be. I'm going to go for one up here. This flower is still wet, but the paint underneath here is dry. So we want totally dry underneath paint for this technique. We are going to take the tiniest little dollop of white, and we're going to blob it on where we want our fairy to be. And then we are going to take the clean end of our Q-tip, and we're going to work in little tiny circular motions just to blur that out into a little circle, okay? So starting on top of the blob of paint and then blurring it out. Now what I would recommend is do a little bit at a time. So another blob on top there, and then blur it out. So now you can see we've got a stronger blur. We're going to do that again. One more time. Blur out the edge. And we're going to finish it with a little dot of white in the middle. One more blur. I said one more, and then I did another one. Little blur. And then finish it with a blob in the middle. And that's just the hint that maybe there's a fairy flying about. There might be another little fairy here. So little dot of white paint. Blur it out. Probably got enough paint on there to do another dot. Blur it out. And then finish with the tiniest little dot right in the center. There we go. We've got two little fairies floating about that painting. So I am going to continue adding some flowers down the bottom here, adding some more fairy magic to this piece. But hopefully you enjoyed this. Super beginner friendly. Anybody can do it. Please hit that like button, give it a little sparkle of fairy magic, and subscribe if you haven't done already. Bye for now.